a burning mausoleum, a ledger that rewrites a life, a dead man's note that reads, "Remember the owl." These were the things that would change everything, but not before Lydia Thorne nearly died twice. 13 hours earlier, rain drummed against the kitchen window of a house in the Dayton suburbs. The canvas teacher bag hit the oak table with a heavy thud. Rain-damped flats clicked against the kitchen tile, a rhythm that matched the exhaustion in Lydia's bones. 63 essays, not graded, a stack of red pens arranged like surgical instruments. The wall clock ticked 5:30 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt longer than a month. She let her shoulders collapse. A long, weary sigh escaped her lips. The sound seemed to absorb into the kitchen air, swallowed by the steady drumming of rain on the window pane. Her hand reached for the counter. A brown cardboard box sat there, innocent and waiting. No return address. Just her name. Lydia Thorne, printed in blocky black ink. She didn't remember ordering anything. The serrated steak knife came out smooth. One clean pull. The blade tore through the packing tape with a jagged rasp that cut through the rain sound outside. The cardboard box fell open like a rib cage. Inside, nestled in gray packing foam, lay a heavy, rusted iron key. Orange oxidation stained her fingertips as she lifted it. The rust flaked. The key was old, genuinely old, not costume jewelry old. Beneath it, wedged into the foam, was a cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. The seal bore a stylized owl, wings spread, geometric and precise. She broke the wax seal with her thumb. The paper inside was expensive. A single line, typed in that unmistakable rhythm of a manual typewriter. 1200 North Street, beneath the floor of Mankind. Her breath caught. The paper crinkled in her grip. Outside the window, the neighbor's driveway. Howard, standing in his driveway, holding an umbrella, staring directly at her kitchen window. His face was obscured by the rain-streaked glass, but she felt the weight of his gaze. When their eyes met, even through the rain and distance and glass, he moved. A sharp turn, footsteps to his black sedan. The engine started in the distance. Her hand pressed against the window. Cold glass. Cold rain on the other side. The key and envelope sat on the counter behind her, waiting. The plywood board screamed against the concrete. Lydia pushed it aside, and the community center's lobby swallowed her. The flashlight beam cut through a thick fog of floating dust, cobwebs, and the particular smell of abandonment. A compound of mold and dead air and time. 8 p.m. Night had come fast. The building's lobby was a graveyard of what it used to be. Faded murals on the walls, broken glass from shattered trophies. The floor was a collage of debris. Scraps of paper, a single abandoned child's shoe, the skeletons of old office chairs with the stuffing gutted out. She moved deeper. The maintenance room door hung half open, its hinges rusted into a permanent screech. Inside, a patterned rug, faded and water-stained. An old industrial mop. Buckets. And in the center of the floor, an iron hatch with a keyhole. The rug slid aside with a dry whisper. Lydia knelt. The rusted key fit the keyhole perfectly. She turned it, heavy, mechanical, a metallic clunk that seemed to echo up from somewhere deep below. The hatch pulled open. What she expected. A basement, concrete, maybe some old storage. What she found. A pristine steel ladder leading down into a corridor of white floor tiles and LED light strips that burned with an almost clinical brightness. The temperature change hit first. Cold air rising from below, the kind of cold that came from climate control, from money, from purpose. She descended the ladder. Each boot rang against the steel rung, a metallic bell tolling downward. At the bottom, a small office. Minimal, functional, a metal desk, a rolling chair, and on the desk, a single leather-bound ledger with gold leaf lettering on the spine. Dayton Redevelopment. Offshore log. She opened it to the first page. The entries were meticulous. Names, amounts, transfer locations, Zurich, Grand Cayman, Singapore. The handwriting was precise, professional. She flipped through, page after page, numbers that made her stomach hollow out. Then she stopped. H. Milton, $500,000 Zurich transfer. Howard, her neighbor from the driveway. She kept reading. A local senator's name, the city superintendent, names that meant something in Dayton. Her heart skipped. Then another beat came wrong, fluttering, rapid. The ringing in her ears started, a high-pitched tone that made it hard to breathe. The hatch above exploded with sound. A heavy boot slammed onto the floor above the opening. Lydia's head jerked up. A shadow dropped through the hatch, silhouetted against the bright LED strips. The figure landed hard in front of her, a thud that shook the white tiles. Black balaclava, black tactical gear, a gloved hand reaching. Lydia's fingers found the ledger. She swung it like an instrument of violence, raw, desperate, all technique abandoned. The corner caught the assailant's temple. The man's head snapped back. Blood sprayed onto the sterile white wall in a fine arterial mist that looked almost artistic against the clean surface. The man lunged. His gloved fingers found Lydia's throat, slammed her backward. The concrete wall hit her spine, the air trapped in her chest. She couldn't breathe. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel, the edges going dark and swimmy. A metal stapler. Heavy. On the desk, her hand found it. She swung it at the man's wrist, where the tactical glove ended. The stapler connected with bone. A crunch. The man's grip released. She gasped. Air, burning in her lungs. She kicked him in the groin and scrambled toward the ladder. Up. Frantic. Her fingers nearly slipped on the rungs, metal cold and slick. The man's hand brushed her boot, fingers grasping. She kicked backward and climbed faster, her whole body trembling with adrenaline, each rung a prayer. She burst through the hatch, slammed it down. Her hands found a filing cabinet. Heavy, metal, solid. She dragged it across the opening, the screech of metal on tile echoing through the chamber. Outside. Into the rainy night. Her car was 3 blocks away. No time. The ledger was pressed against her chest, her clothes torn at the shoulder, and there was blood on her hands that might have been hers or might not have been. The rain washed it down her wrists in thin pink streams. Her keys shook in her grip, metal against metal. Jingle, jingle. The lock finally turned. Inside. Door bolted behind her. She leaned against it, breathing like she'd run a marathon. The floorboards creaked. Lydia spun. The ledger came up like a shield. Howard was sitting in her armchair. No lights on. Just his silhouette against the window where the street lamp outside cast a thin glow. He held a crystal glass of amber bourbon in his hand. Ice clinked. The small sound was obscene in the darkness. You shouldn't have taken the key, Lydia. His voice was calm, measured. Curiosity is a terminal illness in this town. He stood slowly. The floorboards groaned. The glass found the side table. His face came into the light from a passing car's headlights. His features sharp, almost sympathetic. He held out a hand, palm up, offering. Lydia retreated. The front door, her back found it. Her hand behind her, fingers finding the handle of the brass umbrella stand, heavy, substantial. She gripped it. Howard stopped 3 feet away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Let it fall to the floor. It landed face up. Her classroom, taken from outside the window, her desk visible, and drawn over it, a red crosshair, jagged and aggressive, centered on where she would have been sitting. "Give me the book," Howard said, "or tomorrow's lesson becomes a eulogy." The words landed like stones. The old sedan screamed down the wet highway. 80 Mharbur, 85. The needle trembling. Lydia's hands white-knuckled on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, high beams exploded into light. A black SUV, gaining. The collision came without warning. The SUV's grille hit her rear bumper. Metal crunching, glass shattering. Her body jerked forward, then whipped back. The cabin filled with the sound of destruction. She wrenched the wheel left. Corrected. The highway stretched ahead, slick with rain, reflecting the headlights like a river of light. The SUV pulled alongside, forced her right. The guardrail appeared and disappeared. She slammed on the brakes. The SUV overshooted, headlights sweeping across trees. Lydia spun the wheel hard. A U-turn, sloppy and violent. The tires screamed. Smoke rose from the pavement. Sparks. The guardrail caught her car's right side. A shower of sparks across the hood. She lost control. The car slid sideways, the trees at the embankment rushing toward her. Time seemed to stretch. A long, slow moment of inevitability. The impact came hard and final. The car crumpled around the largest tree, metal folding like origami. The airbag deployed with a violent thump. For a moment, everything was white powder and the smell of burning rubber. Then silence. Lydia kicked the crumpled door. It scraped open. She fell onto muddy grass, gasping. The ledger was still in her grip, pressed against her ribs like a shield. Behind her, the SUV's doors opened. 2 men in suits stepped out. Both drew silenced pistols with the practiced ease of people who'd done it 1,000 times. The first shot came almost gently, a soft thwip. The tree beside Lydia exploded into splinters. She ran. The hollow log was just large enough. She curled into it, her knees against her chest, her teeth chattering so hard she was afraid they'd make a sound. Her breath visible in the cold air. Dead leaves beneath her. The smell of decay and earth and rain. Flashlight beams swept through the trees above. Voices. Male. Distant but growing closer. She pulled the ledger into her lap. Her phone's light came up. Soft blue glow on the pages. And there it was. Different handwriting. Not the precise, professional script from the earlier entries. This was elegant. Cursive. Familiar in a way that made her stomach clench. She recognized it. Knew it the way you know the sound of someone's voice, the particular way they held their shoulders. Her father's writing. Thorn, A. Coordination shield, 1.2 met. Her father, Arthur Thorn, dead for 5 years. Buried in a pauper's grave because there was no money, no estate, no inheritance. Her mother had told her he'd failed at everything, that he'd died poor and forgotten. Coordination shield. The word swam in the blue light of her phone screen. Her hand trembled. A tear escaped before she could stop it. The twig snapped right outside the log. A black boot stepped into the mud, inches from her face. Then the barrel of a pistol lowered into her line of sight. She could see the stitching on the boot, the texture of the mud, the rifling inside the gun barrel. Her phone vibrated. The screen flashed. Bright. Sudden. Or the light illuminated the log, illuminated Lydia's face. The gunman's shadow fell across the opening. She burst from the end of the log like something wild. Her legs pumped. The wrought iron fence at the edge of the woods came up fast. She vaulted over it. The metal caught her skin. She felt it tear, a line of pain across her ribs. But she was already rolling into the graveyard. Behind her, the gun fired. A tombstone shattered. Granite shards exploded into the night. The rain was heavier here. The cemetery was a landscape of slick stone and shadows. She duck-walked behind a Victorian angel statue, wings spread, face serene, oblivious to the violence at its base. The gunman stalked between the graves, methodical, hunting. The iron garden stake was buried in the mud. Decorative, pointed, about 2 feet long. She pulled it free. The metal was cold, rusted, heavy enough. The gunman rounded the statue. Lydia lunged low. The stake drove into the man's thigh. The moment it penetrated was visceral, a distinct resistance as the metal slid between muscle. The gunman's scream tore through the cemetery, raw and animal. The pistol flew from his hand, skidded across the wet grass, disappeared into the shadows near a dark mausoleum. The man collapsed. Lydia was on him before he could recover. Her hands found his throat, the back of his head. She slammed it against the stone base of the angel. Once, twice. The man went limp. His body went slack. She stood. Her chest heaved. Her hands trembled. Blood, his blood, covered her teacher's blouse in a spray pattern that looked almost deliberate. A figure appeared at the cemetery gate. Not a gunman. Howard. He held a flare. Red. Bright. He struck it. The graveyard exploded into red light, billowing red smoke. And Howard's face, illuminated and monstrous, fixed on hers with an expression that was almost apologetic. Lydia backed into the mausoleum. The stone doorway framed her. Howard walked toward her, the red flare casting his shadow long and terrible against the tombs. He stopped at the threshold. Arthur Thorne wasn't just on the payroll, Lydia. His voice was soft, chilling. He was the architect. Look at the last entry. She turned the final pages. Her hands shook so badly she could barely grip the paper. A photograph, stuck to the leaf with a rusted paperclip. Old, grainy, from the 90s. Her father, unmistakable, his jaw line the same as hers, his eyes the same. Shaking hands with Howard in front of the community center. The text beneath read, "Archive complete. All witnesses neutralized." By Arthur Thorne. The ink looked black as dried blood in the red light of the flare. Howard dropped the dying flare. It sizzled in the mud. He reached into his jacket. A silver Zippo lighter. He flicked it open. The flame was small but bright. A pool of yellow light in a world of red and black. "Your father wanted this book burned," Howard said. "He just didn't have the heart to do it himself. Now, you'll do it, or you'll stay in this mausoleum permanently." Lydia slumped against the stone sarcophagus inside the tomb. The smell hit her. Decay, damp earth, the particular cold that accumulated in places meant to house the dead. She looked at the ledger. Her father's legacy written in careful ledger lines. His handwriting, his name. All of it a monstrous lie built on decades of theft and corruption and murder. No allies, no car. A killer at the door. The ringing in her ears was constant now. Howard began splashing gasoline across the floor. The clear liquid shimmered on the stone, spreading in growing pools. The smell of petrol overwhelmed everything. It seeped into her clothes, into her lungs. Chemical and acrid and absolute. She watched the gasoline soak into her hem. This wasn't just about the book. Howard was erasing her, making her disappear. There would be no body. Just an accident. A stray flare. A tragedy. She looked at the ledger one final time. At the bottom of the last page, in her father's handwriting, small, rushed, urgent, was a note. "Lydia, if you find this, remember the owl." The same owl from the wax seal. The same owl that must have meant something to him. A symbol, a code, a breadcrumb. Howard held the Zippo over the gasoline. He looked at her with regret. He began to tilt the lighter. The flame danced downward, toward the flammable pool. "Wait!" Lydia screamed. Howard let the lighter fall. The flame hit the gas. A wall of fire erupted, violent and sudden and total. The exit sealed itself in orange and yellow. Heat slammed against Lydia's face, so intense it felt like her skin was being flayed. She threw her arm up to shield her face. The stone walls of the mausoleum glowed orange. Shadows danced. The fire roared like something alive. Smoke filled the ceiling, thick, black, choking. Lydia crawled toward the back of the tomb, her lungs burning. The smoke was alive in her throat. She gagged, crawled. And there it was, a stone relief carved into the rear wall. An owl, geometric and precise. Wings spread, eyes hollowed out. She jammed the rusted key into the owl's eye socket. Something shifted. The stone groaned, a deep, mechanical sound. The back wall of the mausoleum pivoted on a central axis, like a door. The opening revealed a narrow gravel path behind the tomb, and beyond it, the blue-black night sky. Lydia threw herself through the opening. The back wall swung shut with a heavy, final sound. For a moment, she lay on the gravel, gasping, pulling air into her lungs. Real air. Cold air. The rain falling on her face. Behind her, the mausoleum was a chimney of fire. She still held the ledger. The heat had scorched the cover black, but the pages inside were intact. All those names, all that evidence, all that truth. Her father hadn't just hidden it. He'd built her a way out. The sedan was still running when Lydia found it at the cemetery. Howard's car. Keys left in the ignition. The hospital smell of its leather interior was a shock to her senses. She screamed into the parking lot of the community center at 1:30 a.m., gravel spinning under the tires. Howard was standing in the parking lot, talking on a satellite phone. He turned at the sound of the car. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding, to something darker. Lydia leaped from the moving car and tackled him to the pavement. They rolled, gravel tearing at her skin, glass cutting. She hammered her fists into his face, his eye, his nose. She felt something crack beneath her knuckles, his blood warm on her hands. Howard shoved her off and reached for a piece of rebar on the ground, some construction debris left over from the community center's failed renovations. He swung. The metal whistled past her ear. She rolled aside and grabbed a landscaping stone. Heavy, solid. She brought it down on his knee. The sound was distinct. Bone versus stone. No contest. His shriek tore through the parking lot. Lydia stood over him, holding the ledger high. She pulled her phone out. The screen showed thousands of concurrent viewers. Live stream. The entire encounter broadcast to the internet in real time. The names in the ledger were sharp and clear on the display. "Class is over, Howard," she said, her voice barely recognizable as her own. The whole world just took the final exam. The sound of sirens filled the distance. Approaching, inevitable. 3 days later, morning light flooded her kitchen. Lydia sat at the table with a fresh cup of coffee. White ceramic, warm against her palms. The television in the background scrolled through news. The anchor's voice was low and steady. Senator arrested. Howard Milton in custody. Corruption investigation expands. She picked up the small envelope she'd found in her father's safe deposit box. Inside was a bank slip. The paper was weathered, aged. The handwriting on it was her father's. The balance read, 200,000, but the account wasn't in his name. It was in hers. And the funds were marked for one specific purpose: Dayton Public School Fund. He hadn't kept a penny. He'd stolen the money from the corrupt officials to fund the very schools they were trying to destroy. He was the shield for the children, not the criminals. For 15 years, he'd been funneling money into education, building the future. Lydia reached for the stack of essays, the same stack from before, the 63 that had been ungraded. She picked up the red pen, the first essay. She made her mark on the top of the page, an A, bold, defiant. The pen moved across the paper. Scratch, scratch. The sound of redemption, or maybe just routine. Outside the window, Dayton was waking up to a new day.